I was working in Calcutta on another project, another feature documentary about a private detective with some friends, but I knew I wanted to find an idea for my first feature documentary, so I was touring the city, met all sorts of people, wrestlers and a hangman, but then actually it was just by chance. I was walking along the street in one of the main bits of Calcutta, walked into the auction house, which was sort of immediately entrancing visually, and then came across the main character, the elder brother of the film, and he's a very outgoing, confident, gregarious guy. So immediately I kind of had a rapport with him, and that was, so it was by chance, but as soon as I met a character like him, I knew the film could go somewhere potentially. It was an interesting experience because I was working with two brothers who had very different backgrounds and very different attitudes towards me at the start. One of them was very confident and wanted to show off all the time, so that was great, it was very easy, although making him relax was a challenge at times. The other one took a lot longer, the younger brother, to trust me and to understand what I was doing, that I wasn't just making propaganda for his brother. We had a really close relationship. I had a really close relationship with both of them and still do, but in very different ways. So when I'm in India, I have to go out with one brother on one night and the other brother on another night. Yeah, it was good. I count them both as friends now. It was tough working with the rest of the staff in the auction house because they didn't speak English, but I worked with someone local who helped with that. I think what impressed me from the point of view of the characters is that the two brothers really let me into their lives in a very intimate way. I think it's not particularly easy for two elderly gentlemen who live in a society where they don't have to express their feelings to do that, and I'm really grateful that they would, and I think that's what made the film what it is, and they realised that once they saw it. I think that's what I'm happiest with about the film, that I was able to get close to them and for them to trust me and for me to trust them, so that we could explore their relationship quite deeply. The other thing that impressed me was just getting to know Calcutta. I think it's not a city that a tourist might go to, but once you live there and spend weeks, months there, then it's got so many layers and it's so fascinating. It's such a rich but very varied history. So I'm really left with a real affection for the place. I have a degree in anthropology, and then I worked in the government for about 9 months and it was terrible. So then I decided to become a filmmaker, and I did another qualification in visual anthropology, which was how I learned the basic practical skills, and then since I did that for the last 7 or 8 years, I've been working as a self-shooting camera director, making all sorts of films, a lot abroad for international NGOs. I do a lot of work domestically in education, a lot of crossover with anthropologists still, so I like working with academics to sort of make films about their research. But now, keen to make another feature doc, although slightly psychologically exhausted at this stage. I'd made a few short films for television in England, as well as lots of other films for organisations, but I'd been looking for 2 years for an idea, and this was the first one that came off. And I thought it was going to be finished in a year maybe, and then it took 4 years from start to end. I think it's exciting in some ways in England. I mean, there's a real growth and there's lots of people making lots of really innovative, exciting films. You know, documentary no longer means boring middle-aged white man talking to camera. There's a huge variety and there's very interesting ways that you can fund films. I worry that it's not sustainable. I certainly can't go through the process that I just went through from a financial or psychological point of view. But on the flip side, like, there are things, I finished my film by funding it through Kickstarter, which didn't exist five years ago. So I think if you can harness some of these new funding models, then there's sort of some sort of potential and excitement for the future. I do think there needs to be some more structure for independent filmmakers who don't want to work within broadcast television, because unless you're lucky and find a production company or a producer willing to tap into money that they know about, then it's very difficult to get off the ground. And we're not going to have new filmmakers because they'll all go bankrupt or mad. Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite at the stage of knowing enough about that at the moment. I'm only starting to distribute, but I think what I've heard is that VOD, video on demand, looks like it could be quite an exciting revenue stream for documentary makers, because there's a huge audience that weren't able to sort of watch these films that only screened at documentary film festivals before, and now can find their niche and find access to the films. It still has the same problem that the whole funding model is backwards, in that you have to make the thing before you get the money, which is very hard. I mean, I made my film in India, so India's cheap, which meant I was able to do it on a very low budget. But if you want to make films in certain other places, then it becomes much more of a challenge if you don't have any money at the start. I think probably a lot of the reason more documentaries are being made in more different ways is just because of access to technology. People are growing up in a much more visual world now. You know, when I do workshops with teenagers, they don't search on Google like I do, they search on YouTube. So people are thinking visually, and just more stories are bound to be told because of that change in paradigm. Yeah, I think there's also an element to which most cinemas are filled with stories that are just being told over and over again in just slightly different ways with the same plot. And formally, documentary is an exciting genre for exploring lots of different crossover ways of making films. So what is fiction, what is documentary? I think people, partly maybe because of a financial pressure as well, people are being more creative about how they approach the subject.